everybody, it's Julie. Happy Thanksgiving if you're watching this on the day of release. I wanted to release a video about Thanksgiving today and giving thanks. So the verse that I'm doing is Philippians 4, verses 4 through 7. And it says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your graciousness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Don't worry about anything, but in everything, through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." What a wonderful passage for this Thanksgiving and for this year, that we just continue to choose to rejoice in the Lord and give thanks, be grateful. Because when we make a choice to be grateful and to give thanks, then it helps us to have a heart of rejoicing. So here's what I'm going to be using today. I'm going to do the Napkin Technique, and I found these. I'm going to use a border, make a border, and maybe use some of these larger ones. I'm going to use this stamp, this Happy Scarecrow stamp. I want to use this scarecrow because he just looks like he's having fun and rejoicing. I'll use some alphas. These are, most of my stamps here are from Creative Worship by Sweet and Sassy Stamps. This one, I think I got at Michael's or Joann's with an embossing kit. So I think it's a Ranger kit, Ranger stamp. And I'm going to use this thanks right here because that's a very pretty script. Here's a sentiments, and I'm going to use perhaps one of these, the words from the hymn, from Timeless Hymns. And by the way, right now at Sweet and Sassy Stamps, there's a sale, buy 3, get 1 free of the silhouettes and sentiments. So these 2 sets are on sale, and then there are lots of other ones on sale too. So check that out. I do have an affiliate link in the description box. I'm going to do some watercoloring with pencils, and I think that's it. So I'll use some things to go along with that. And I'm going to be coloring on some watercolor paper. Just wanted to let you know that. I'm going to stamp the scarecrow on here and then color it. And that'll give me a nice blend, and then I'm going to cut it out and adhere it into my Bible. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on fast forward as we get started. Okay, so I'm using the Napkin Technique, and one of the first things that, well, the first thing you have to do is separate the plies. So it's kind of hard to do sometimes, so I'm actually getting my tweezers to get that, and you want to pull all the extra layers. This one is just a 2-ply. Sometimes it's even more than that. So you separate the plies, the layers of the napkin. Now I want to use this napkin as a border. So what I'm doing here is I'm using my aqua brush. You can also use a wet paint brush, and I'm pulling off the edges. You want to really kind of isolate the image. So I'm just using my brush to wet the area, and I like the aqua brush because it's not as wet as a wet paintbrush would be, but it can certainly be used. So I wet around the edges to outline that image, and then I'm able to pull apart the napkin there. And I just use my fingernail. I started with my tweezers, but I like using just my finger to pull it apart. I didn't want, the tweezers were pulling it to the side too much. So I am pulling that edge off to give it a feathery, frayed look, and that's going to help it melt into the background more than if I had just cut the sides. It really blends better into the background if you have that frayed edge. Okay, so now I'm using Gesso to stick this down, to apply it down, and you start with a thin layer on your entire page. I'm using a scraping technique. You can use a brush, you can also use your fingers, you can use a brayer. I'm using a paint card or just an old gift card, and I'm getting a very thin layer. This is clear gesso. Now you can also use a matte medium or a glossy medium that is sticky. I have used that many times, and actually I kind of like that look, but this one, when you're using gesso, it gives it a rougher edge, which I was fine with, and this was easier for me to get out. It was right there on my page, on my desk. Okay, so once you've applied that gesso or that medium, then you can put your napkin image down. Now it had already started to dry a bit. It does quick dry, so I had to apply a little bit more. And then I like using my fingers for this part. You just gently rub it down, and you can already see how it's starting to just blend and melt into the background. I use my paint card with the gesso that's still on it to get those edges that aren't lying down. Now I'm going to go up here in this top section and apply that. And then I'll trim the edges off after it's all dried, because you can see it is hanging off a little bit, and I'll trim that. So you use your fingers. You can also use a brayer, but I do find that my fingers work best for this. It helps me to get out any bumps or bubbles. This is not a perfect technique, so if you want it to be completely flat, then I wouldn't suggest trying this, because it's going to drive you crazy, because it does have some texture to it. Now I'm going to apply that acorn over here in the text by the verse where I'm journaling. And now you come in with another layer on top of it. And here's where I'm using my brush. And you just apply it on top of your image. And this gives it that that adhesive. It seals it, and it makes it stick completely. And you do want to be gentle with this. I'm using my brush because I find that to be a little bit more gentle than the scraping technique for this part. I didn't want to pull the image off that's already there. And then you wipe. Make sure you wipe what might be along the edge, because if any of that medium or the gesso gets on the back of it between your desk and your page, it could stick to it. So I used a baby wipe and just cleaned that. Now I'm going to set that aside to dry, and now I'm going to start my stamping. And this is an outline image, this big happy scarecrow. This is what reminds me. The reason why I chose the scarecrow is because the whole premise of this text is to rejoice. And I just see this little guy, and he looks like he's jumping for joy and rejoicing. He has the joy of the Lord. Now I'm coloring with some watercolor pencils, and I do speed this up because I actually took about 20-25 minutes to do this coloring. And this is why I don't do a lot of coloring, because it takes a lot of time. But it's also very relaxing when you do it. So while I'm coloring here, I'm thinking about the verse, and I'm thinking about all my blessings and all the things I have to be grateful for. And that's what helps me when I remember the things I have to be grateful for, and I choose to be grateful, I choose an attitude of gratitude, then it makes more of that joy and that peace in my heart. It makes for contentment. It makes for that eternal joy. It really is a choice that we make by choosing to be grateful. On screen here, you can see the way I'm coloring. I color the outlines, and then I give some heaviness to the areas where I would think it'd be darker. And then I'm going to come in. So I am using a series of colors. Some of them are right next to each other in the color wheel. Some of them are shades of each other. And I fill this in with my watercolor brush, and I'm actually picking up some of the color directly from the tip, and then I even come in while it's still a little wet and I add some more color directly with the pencil. I'm just building that vibrancy, building up the color. Now watercolor pencils, after you activate them with water, it gives that watercolor look. So if I wanted a more vibrant look to this, I would use my Big Brush markers, my Inktense pencils, or I don't have a Copic markers, but I do have some alcohol markers. Copic markers would certainly probably be the most vibrant and blendable. I think it's fun to watch this little guy come to life with the color. Okay, I dry that some. I'm adding a little bit of detail in the sunflower with my white Posca pen. And I'm going to cut him out. I didn't show that because that took a long time too. Now I'm coming in and cutting off these edges of the napkin. This page is pretty much dry. I do have to hit it with my heat tool again. Okay, so there's my little guy, my scarecrow once he's cut out. And now I'm going to stamp my sentiments on here, my title. And I'm going to say, rejoice and give thanks. And I'm trying to line up my pieces, my letters, and I decide to move it up to the top. You can see here when I'm stamping, I stamped it at the top, and I'm going to put the scarecrow at the bottom. I'm using VersaFine Black Onyx ink. Onyx Black, I think it's called. Onyx Black. And this is a permanent ink, but what I find a little bit later in the process is that because I've got the gesso here, this ink takes longer to dry than I'm used to. And I do end up smudging the black, but we work with that. I wasn't sure how it was going to stamp over that napkin, but it worked out okay. So I'm using a couple of different alphabets here from Sweet and Sassy Stamps, and I will be sure to link all of the products that I use. Can't link the napkin, found that at Tuesday morning, I believe. But while you're having your Thanksgiving dinner, or anytime you're at some kind of function, look at the napkins and see if it's something that can be used. The best ones are those that have a white background, because they really do blend into the page. Okay, now I'm making a tag, and I'm taking that napkin and just applying it onto some cardstock with a glue stick. I'm going to use a dry glue. Don't use your adhesive tape, because that will pull the napkin and it'll rip it. So I use glue stick, and I stuck that on there and was actually able to just cut it out with my tab punch. Okay, here's where I smudged the black ink when I was adding in the orange on my verse. So that means that I need to add some black splatter to cover up that black smudge. So I pull out my Illustrated Faith watercolor set. That black is something I always reach for when I'm doing the splattering. And I scrape on the edges of my little tag with the black. Now I'm going to stamp onto that. Now the sentiment said rejoicing with you, so I actually just put a piece of washi tape over the with you, the words with you, and masked that. And I applied the ink, and then I pulled the washi tape off so I could stamp it. It's hard for you to see. It's not really clear on the tab, So I applied that with liquid glue. I'm coming in and outlining my verses. And I also gave an edge of quiet yellow, an ink from Creative Retreat kits. I gave that around the edge of the entire page. I'm coming in with my white Posca pen and adding some detailing to the lettering. That helps it to stand off that napkin a little bit, makes it a little more defined. I get a little happy with this white Posca pen, and so I come back in and fix that with a black pen. Now I'm going to stick my scarecrow down with some foam adhesives and make him kind of pop off the page. He's jumping out of these leaves. This is just a fun, happy, joyous page. Now I decide to just smudge all of that. It's still slightly wet, and by smudging it just gives it more of a uniform look. Like I meant to do that. Yeah. Gonna add a little bit of washi tape. I'm gonna tie a bow with this black gingham ribbon, which is so cute. Put that up at the top. So I do have so much to be thankful for this year. My boys are home from college, and I'm just so grateful for my family, for my friends, for my church, for my ministry, for my job. Add a little bit of detailing here, some splatter with the rust color. It's kind of a rust burgundy. These are Adorn It watercolor pencils, so each one doesn't have its own color name. There's my page. Here's some close-up shots. Thanks for joining me today, and I pray that you have a happy Thanksgiving, or that you just choose to be in a time of thanksgiving, a time of gratitude, because that's what makes all the difference. Give this video a thumbs up. If you liked it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment in the comment section, and God bless. Bye-bye.